His name is Bodhi. We weren't going to get another dog, but we made it 6 weeks. There's something about that one, and we went over and we just immediately fell in love with him. That dog caught so many tears in his fur of every failed infertility treatment and negative pregnancy test, and he was just the best dog. But then all hell broke loose. We immediately rushed into the emergency vet and we had to put him down. My son texted me from school and said, "Mom, Bodhi's at school with me. He's following me around the hall."
Welcome to Next Realm, Beautiful Stories from Beyond, a show that explores the profound and heartwarming stories of individuals who've experienced messages from their departed loved ones. I'm your host, Amber Rasmussen, and today's guest is my friend Ashleigh. We'll be discussing what happens to our pets when they pass on, how to handle children who have spiritual gifts, and we're even going to hear from a psychic medium who will give us her advice. Ash, you're back.
I'm back.
We haven't talked about spirit animals. And in addition to that, we're going to talk about children with abilities. Mm-hmm. And we talked about you in episode 3 of how you've always grown up and had these abilities. If I remember correctly, your mom was pretty supportive of it, right? But not everyone is, right?
Yeah, she was. I was a very scared child because I didn't know what I was seeing at night. And I I think I slept on her floor almost every night. In hindsight, we know what was happening. And she's super supportive today. But I could have had more support, I guess is the way to put it.
Yeah. Well, it's probably something that a lot of parents don't really know how to deal with, which is why we're going to have Crystal chat with us here a little bit and kind of talk to us about how to deal with that with our kids, and then maybe just talk about animals and how they relate to us in the spirit world. So with that said, let's talk about your pup. What was his name and what kind of dog? Tell us how you got him and how that came to be.
His name is Bodhi, or was Bodhi. And my husband and I had another dog before. His name was Bear, and he passed away of old age. And we weren't going to get another dog, but we made it 6 weeks when a friend of mine reached out and said, "Hey, my brother's black lab accidentally snuck out of the house and got pregnant by the working Australian Shepherd next door, and he has 5-week-old puppies, and he has to find homes for them because he was needing to return to Utah for a forest firefighting job," or it was something like that. And so 5 weeks is really, really early to pick up a dog, but they had no choice. It was either that or they were going to send him to rescue. So we were like, "Oh, we'll go look." At that point, my house was just so clean, and I was crying every day because I didn't have dog hair to clean up or dirt to clean up, and I was just really missing the dog. And we went and we looked, and there were several puppies, and there was a different puppy that I was looking at that had a little bit more marbling to them, a super cute dog, and I was kind of drawn to that one. But then in this corner, there was this other little dog just sitting there, all black with just a little bit of white, and he was just sitting on the dog bed looking at us like, "I'm not going to get up and come to you. You can come to me." And Kevin goes, "What about that one? There's something about that one." And we went over and we just immediately fell in love with him and said, "Okay, we'll take him home," and brought him home at 5 weeks old. And he, Kevin would take him to work sometimes in the back of his car and in his crate, and come out at lunchtime and walk him. And then I had a sales job, so he would come in my car with me, in this crate in the back, because we couldn't leave him at home. And he was our, he helped amend our hearts from losing our first dog, Bear. But then on top of it, I was in the middle of an infertility journey. My husband and I went through a 5-year infertility journey trying to become parents, Unexplained. It was a really difficult time because we wanted to be parents. We lost our dog. We got Bodhi, and Bodhi quickly became that comfort dog that kind of just, he was given to us, I think, at that time. I feel like Bear sent him to us to kind of help heal our hearts and help us through the process of still trying to become parents. But that dog caught so many tears in his fur of every failed infertility treatment and negative pregnancy test, and he was just the best dog. He was so smart and very, very loyal, and that dog was really in tune to everybody's emotions. He knew your emotions and was always there. Just a really cool dog.
And cue my tears already. I'm like, I feel like, because I also went through IVF, so I'm like, oh, now I'm even more heartbroken. Okay, so obviously you had a baby.
We
So
did.
tell me
Yeah.
how that worked out with
Mm-hmm.
Bodhi and your little one.
So Bodhi probably was like a 3-year-old dog at the time when we finally got pregnant. And Bodhi knew the whole time when I was pregnant that there was a kiddo in there. Like, you know how the dogs do where they kind of rest their head on your belly and they can hear the heartbeat. And I ended up having Cameron came early. We had all sorts of complications, and I was gone for a week, and we were in NICU for 2 weeks. I remember vividly bringing my son home and introducing him to Bodhi, and Bodhi immediately became this protector and would sleep in his room, would follow him everywhere, was constantly on the floor next to him. They played, and they just had a bond. I only have one child, and so my son has always said Bodhi was his brother, and they just had this they grew up together. He was without a doubt really bonded to my son, and like I said, would sleep in his room almost every single night. There were a few nights, of course, where he didn't, but there was a period in time where our son would not go to sleep until Bodhi was in his room, and they were just super, super bonded.
We all know a dog like Bodhi, right? Man's true best friend. Now, I'm not sure if Ashleigh knew it or not when she named him, but if you look it up, it means awakening or enlightenment. So fitting, right? Especially as we hear more about Ashleigh's story and her spiritual journey. Well, after 14 years, it was time for Bodhi to cross the Rainbow Bridge. But before you shed a tear, you'll love how he came back for his best friend and Ashleigh's son, Cameron, to let him know that he'll always be there right by his side.
He made it to being 14 years old, and we lost him this last October. We knew things were slowing down. He was having, doggy dementia, and he was getting up in the middle of the night and wandering the house, and he was lost. And he started to gain some weight because we knew he had some tumors, and, he was an old dog, and he was about ready to turn 15. His birthday was the very next month to be 15. And unfortunately, just one morning, he'd had a rough night, and I had a feeling that he might be getting ready to pass. And what was interesting is we do have another dog, and that dog on our side sleeps on my side of the bed. And that dog in particular is very bonded to me. He's a German Shepherd. He's very bonded to me and has never let Bodhi sleep on my side of the bed. Duke sleeps on the floor, but he won't let him come to even to that side of the bed, and he would get up and be very protective. But that night, Duke, the night before Bodhi passed, Duke let him lay on the floor next to me. I think Duke knew that Bodhi was about to go. I think there's just signs, and animals know. And that next morning, my husband took Bodhi for a walk. He actually even chased a ball for a little bit. And I was thinking, okay, things, I think maybe we're not there yet, even though we knew it was coming, because he couldn't sit down. We had to help him lay down. He was breathing heavily all the time, wandering all night. But then all hell broke loose, and we don't know if something ruptured inside or what. We immediately rushed him to the emergency vet, and we had to put him down. That night was really rough because it was the first time my son had really ever slept without Bodhi in his room. And my son has always had gifts. My father passed away 7 years ago. He's seen my father on the playground. He sees him at school. He sees him in his sleep. He sees other spirits at night. There's a lot going on with my son that reminds me of my childhood, where he is seeing things, and we're trying to help him. I'm trying to help him understand it. Help him work through it, help teach him how to, talk to his spirit guides, teach him how to communicate. If something's scaring him, to tell them, to put up those barriers, to put up those walls, to ask them to leave. So, that's been happening. But on top of it, Bodhi has been making an appearance to him, either whether it's in the middle of the night. A couple weeks ago, he texted me, my son texted me from school and said, "Mom, Bodhi's at school with me. He's following me around the hall, and my son's a 6th grader." And I'm like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, I see him. He's like following me." And when I talk to him more, I'm like, "Do you actually like physically see him? Is it like, what is it?" And he's like, he's not like what he looks like in life, but like he knows he's there. And like he kind of sees like these shadows, if you will. It's hard to explain. And he's been just appearing all over the place. And we think, Bodhi is sending us lots of messages. we have a Google, like a Google Home that plays it's synced to all of our Google photos. And constantly, like, we'll be talking about Bodhi, and a series of photos will pull up. Or I had been really grieving his loss, and it was like, I think the 1 month anniversary of losing him, and all of a sudden my phone out of nowhere decided to make a Google movie about my dog, about Bodhi. And so there's lots of little signs happening, but I would say most nights Cameron is seeing Bodhi in his room. Like his presence is still there. It's pretty wild.
Like, have you seen him, felt him?
Yes, I've definitely felt him. There's been a lot of moments where I'm sitting there and I just suddenly think of him, and I feel him like to my right, or I feel him to my left, or I see something out of the corner of my eye, and I'm like, I think Bodhi's here. Not quite as vivid as what I think my son is seeing, but no question. And there's been times when Duke too starts acting like he did when Bodhi was around. Like almost getting a little protective of me, or like sometimes when I'd sit on the couch and Bodhi would come near for attention, Duke would get jealous. And there's been a few moments where that's happened, and I'm like, is Bodhi here? Like, can you see him? I fully believe that animals are part of our soul path, our soul journey. They're part of the contract. And when you lose one dog, they'll send you another. And like Duke came into my life right before my dad passed, so I feel like he was brought to me for that reason. And then Bodhi was brought to us when we were in the grieving process and getting ready to have a child. And my son keeps asking for another dog, and I said, Bodhi, if we're meant to have another dog, Bodhi will send us that dog.
I just love to hear about Bodhi's bond with Ashleigh and her family. But this all brings up another topic that we're going to dive into today: children with spiritual abilities. And for this, I invited my friend Crystal, who is a psychic medium, to give us her thoughts.
I used to see a lot of things as a kid, and now as an adult, I kind of see like replays, certain events, especially if it's a tragic event. It'll just play like either sometimes black and white or in color, and it'll be a replay of the event. I couldn't help but pick up a lot about your son having the ability to see your dog in a lot of places and just know that he was around. I say this because when I was a kid, my first ability was when I was 3. I think I was 3 or 4. I would constantly tell my mom that there was monkeys in my room. And we lived in a very old house. Now, let me get back around this house. It was an old house. It was right next to my grandmother's house. This man sold this house to my mom for a very low, decent price, because he knew that my mother had escaped a domestic violence situation. So she got this house, and what I discovered that the owner's wife died at the house, and I would see her a lot in the house. At times I would see obviously monkeys. I would complain to my mom about monkeys being in my room, and she would be like, this is just a nightmare, nothing to see. We grew up very Catholic church, and I got baptized and everything. So it was not a conversation that we had to always have. After the monkeys would show up, a lion would always show up and roar and always lay on my lap. And then I took it, like, oh, wow, he's my protector. And then, as I mentioned before, the owner's wife who passed away, I confused her for my aunt for the longest time, because I would always say like, well, my aunt was here, and I would say like, Aunt so-and-so was here. Why was she here? And she was looking at the refrigerator. She was in the kitchen. My mom was like, why would my sister be here? Like looking at the refrigerator. And I would describe her to a T, and my mom wouldn't say anything, because I think she believed that if she said like facial expressions or anything, she was worried that I would pick up on it. It wasn't until when I was about, I think I was 16. In my high school, there was a murder that took place, and this is like the early 2000s. I graduated in 07. So this is way before, you call the parents, let them know of an incident. And I think I had just stopped talking about spirits, because I saw the tragic event of a student killing another student right there in front of me. Nobody had no idea what happened, but there was a lot of blood on the sidewalk. And I was in band, and I would walk up, and where the girl had died, she died right where I would wait to get let into the band room. And I remember watching the trail of blood, thinking like what happened. And then I would get like, it's almost like if somebody runs past you. And it played real slow motion when I paid attention to it. And that was the last time I spoke about any of my experiences until I was in college.
Some people believe that we all come into the world with our psychic connection fairly intact, but it's societal and family programming that numbs our connection.
I have to say that I really do appreciate you telling your son, like teaching him how to create barriers and so, because it's so important, especially around that age. How old is your son again?
He is almost 12.
That's an important age because that's when they start realizing, okay, I'm different. Things are different. I remember when I was about 8 or 9, I remember I told this girl, I asked a girl, at that time, she was my friend. I said, when you hold objects, do you see where this object came from? Like you step in time? She looked at me and she goes, no. And I said, neither do I. And she looked at me and I was like, okay, let's go play. And so that's when I started to pick up on things. My family wasn't really talking about it. And then I had no outlet or to talk about it. So I felt like I shouldn't talk about it. So it was very important that you create that open communication with your child, because you don't want them to feel that they're odd or, it's really strange to pick up on things, especially when you're intuitive. I would say, like, if you do have an intuitive individual if you're intuitive, more likely someone else in the family is very highly intuitive. I discovered that. And it's a long line of it. It just depends on certain strengths. And I know that you have mentioned that you would see Bodhi, right, differently than what your son saw. And that's how spirit comes into us in different ways.
We're going to hear more tips for parents with intuitive children, but here are just a few to consider. Number 1, validate their intuition. Be careful, though, not to shame them for their insights or alter the truth about what they're noticing. Number 2, participate in imaginary play, because imagination is huge for keeping connected to the psychic realm. Number 3, learn some basic visual techniques and games to help children manage their own energy fields. Number 4, understand that they may actually be perceiving things that you are not, and that they are truly real. All kids go through some struggles with fear about falling asleep, and just before and during sleep, we're very much open and potentially vulnerable to seeing spirits. And number 5, value the psychic connection. Inquire about what they are receiving.
I have to tell you this because it gave me the chills. When you said that your phone popped up of like a photo or like a replay video with a bunch of photos, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I put down my dog, Chance, who was my husband's dog. He was kidney failure and so, but I just knew, I knew. He looked at me and I said, okay, it's time. When he passed, no one would be in the house when my husband was gone because my husband's in the Marines and he had left and I was alone dealing with 2 young children and then, having to put his dog down, which is really hard. I would hear him. I wouldn't see him, but I would hear him. And then the day that I put him down, I walked, my kids were in school and I sat in the backyard and I was crying my eyes out. It was a really beautiful day, and clear as day, I heard his bark. And no other dog was out there. I just heard his bark. And then I was like, he's still here. So I felt him a while. I felt him a lot more whenever my husband was gone. He was more of our watchdog. He would keep an eye on the house and everything. So it's not uncommon when a deceased loved one or a deceased pet still shows up to us in various times in our lives, even continuously. They just like to check in, make sure everything's okay, and then they just hop on and hop in. I love that your son still is able to feel or see him. It's kind of like they're guardians in a sense. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense. And I think it gives him some peace and some comfort. I think he tries to communicate with him too, whether it's, through we've been dabbling in dowsing rods with yes no questions, which
Oh,
is a
I
whole nother.
love dowsing rods. Yes.
And my son, I cannot get the dowsing rods to move, no matter how much I meditate or try. I mean, they move very slowly. My son picks them up and they move very quickly. It's mind-boggling to me. And of course, there's in talking to, other friends that are mediums, I know that there's a lot that can go into a dowsing rod, but that's another thing that he's kind of been doing too. And he's got a gift that I don't have, or he's not as blocked as I think as maybe some of us are when we become adults and we get so stressed on other things. It's interesting. He'll just suddenly just say out of nowhere, Bodhi's here, or Papa's here, or last a couple weeks ago there was somebody scary in his room when he woke up, and it's the first time he's had me come into his room, but I'm trying to help him understand, how to put those barriers up and also not be afraid. And what was interesting is right before this, he woke me up, I had been having a dream about my grandmother, and he said it was a woman that was in his room. So that I feel like maybe one of my great grandmother was visiting him. That's kind of what we've decided upon, but it scared him. Anyway, just wild.
I have a question for both of you. So, because Ash, I know you had abilities when you were young, and Crystal, you did too. It seems like in the very beginning, it seems like you don't realize that everyone else can't see what you can or can't experience. You know what I mean? It's like you're oblivious that yeah, whatever. But what is that age when all of a sudden you realize, oh shoot, no one else has, am I crazy or is there something wrong with me? And that's when you shut down and stop talking about it. And then when do you get to the place where you're like, no, it's okay that, you know what I mean? And how do you your son's 12. So how do you support him and then also explain to him that not everyone gets the woo?
We've definitely had that conversation. I mean, I got his permission before doing this podcast because I was like, what happens if a friend at school hears it? Like, are you okay with this? And he's fine with it. I wanted to make sure I got it because he knows and he understands that not everyone is like him. And at least for me, I had a lot of experiences as a child. And I think one of my last memories was middle school going into high school when I woke up in the middle of the night and a neighbor boy and his father they had both passed. The neighbor boy had passed from leukemia when I was 8, and then the father passed away about 5 or 6 years later. I woke up in the middle of the night and they were in my room, and they showed up several times, and I knew it was them. And I did tell my mom about that, and I was like, Daryl and Darren have shown up, and you just know it's them. And it was right about that time where I think I shut it down, and I went into high school and college. But my husband, consistently, I have woken him up in the middle of the night because I wake up and I will see something, and sometimes I'll jump under the covers or I'll jump on top of him. There's a lot of stuff that happens in my sleep that he sees. So I know even when we started dating in our 20s, stuff would happen like that, and then it kind of stopped. And then when my dad died 7 years ago, that's when things started to come back for me, but I've also been working on it.
So when I left my home to go to college for the first time, I started realizing there are things that I started to pick up, safe people and not so safe people. I could feel their energies and intentions a lot more than I ever felt before. I think because, yes, you have that. Ashleigh, you had mentioned that sometimes when people grow up, you get that the static isn't there anymore. It's more clouded and, with everyday life and stresses. But when I left my home, I didn't have a stress, I was 19 and I felt like I could do anything. I started to really pick up on people, especially when people I would come across, or they would touch my shoulder, hold my hand, or just brush on me. I would pick up small glimpse of either their attitude or intention. And at times I was like, this is weird, or I thought that this was just I'm being crazy or I'm overthinking, it's just crazy brain. So I kind of just for a while, I didn't really understand until one time there was so I was a news reporter for the city and also for the college university at the time that I was attending. And I remember there was a case about a student who, a sexual assault case. And I remember a guy who, was a potential suspect, but denied everything. And it wasn't until he brushed by me, I'm like, he did it. I just saw it, I felt it. I'm like, he did it. And then after a few weeks passes by, the investigation is still ongoing. They ended up arresting him. And I'm like, all right. And I think at the time I had just turned 20 and I said, okay, this is interesting. So then I started to find certain locations in my area for haunting stuff. I mean, I love the paranormal stuff, but I wanted to test it, I really just wanted to be like, is it me? So I went with a group of girlfriends and I remember we went to this kind of haunted, it wasn't a haunted, it was like a museum that was a house and very historical, had a lot of history. And people were talking about paranormal activity. And I remember I was with a bunch of girls and I was at the last one, something pulled my hair. And then I heard giggling and I'm like, oh, who the hell pulled I thought it was, I was like, what person pulled my hair? I went to the tour guide and I said, I don't know if my hair got caught off my jacket, but somebody pulled my hair. And they're like, oh no, we've had multiple things like that. That's so funny you said that because we've been waiting for somebody to experience that. And I said, that's interesting. And so just stuff like that along the line in college, I was able to pick up on people's intentions and I was like, this is new. And doing mediumship professionally, because my background in itself, I'm a behavioral criminologist. I deal with cold cases and homicides and stuff like that. So coming out as a medium was kind of hard because it's like, wow, who's really going to take me seriously? I used to be an investigative news reporter, but I hid what my abilities were for all my life because of the fear of being judged. But it wasn't until I was probably my mid-20s, it wasn't until I was my 30s, I said, you know what? This is who I am and this is just what they're going to get. And with my husband's full support, he was like, go for it. Because I was scared that everybody in his unit and in the military were going to be like, wow, your wife's weird. And I thought it was going to hinder his career, and it didn't. So I kind of just went for it. And then I started to read for people for giggles and I would say don't freak out. And so especially when their loved ones would pop up right behind them, somebody would be talking to me and then I would see their loved one. I believe the reason why I was so open to who I am now to everybody, is because of the support that I have for friends and my family. I mean, if I didn't have their support, I don't think I would be like, oh yeah, let's do this. Cause I would still have that fear of being judged or not taken seriously.
I guess that's the beautiful thing about aging, right? We become more comfortable with our authentic selves. But there was still something on my mind that I needed an answer to. What is the difference between, so all three of you, Ashleigh and her son, have all had these abilities since you were kids. Whereas myself, I did not. I did not until a tragic event happened and all of a sudden the floodgates open. What does that mean? Is it all within us?
Yes.
And some people just are better at it, or is there things that happen and all of a sudden the floodgates open and all of a sudden I have these abilities, or did I have them all along and I just didn't know it? What is that?
So we're all born intuitive. If you read the book of Enoch, it talks about the Watchers teaching the humans how to, read stuff, read the stars and so forth, which I highly recommend the book of Enoch to anybody. So it talks about the earlier times. We all are grown with that extra ability, to be attuned. Our children choose us, they choose us, they grow within us, right? So that's where the first ability starts. Mother and child, you guys have the initial connection. And once they come into the world, they're still attached to you because they feel you, they know you. And as you grow, you start knowing things around you. I feel that we are all born with this ability. Sometimes people don't need much practice and it comes to us. And it's probably very present when you're in your earlier childhood years, because you don't have any stress. You don't have anything. You just came from, whether people believe it or not, like heaven from above, people get I call it the reactivation when a tragic event occurs. It kind of gives you like the hyper awareness that, and also depending on the event that occurred, it opens your eyes more like, okay, this is a bigger picture.
Do you have a question, Ash? You look like you're pondering.
Yeah, well, I was curious too about, like, when you said, I think you said vibration and how high of vibration you are. And that's something I've noticed about myself, that my vibration and kind of that empath and taking in emotions and feeling the energy around me can really bring me down. And that's when I get blocked. Like, I'm pretty blocked right now with everything going on in the world. Like, I feel like I'm very low vibration right now. So I'm curious, like, can you talk more about that? Like, what does it mean, like, to be higher vibration, and how do you get yourself maybe more into a more constant state of higher vibration, and tune out other energy or whatever, so that you can tap into the gifts that you may not even know you have, or you have, but you want to enhance?
That's a great question. So I'm not going to give you the love and light version. I always think that's like weird positivity. It annoys me. So also I have ADHD and OCD. So like meditation, I can't sit in a room and just be like, listen, like just meditate. I do things like going on for a walk and tuning things out. Like, if I really need to connect with something, I have to go outside. And that's either like standing in the grass. If I'm too stressed, I work out, because it's happy endorphins, right? So once you're feeling really good and you're in that good mindset, you can actually release a lot of that stress and become more opened. When I'm just don't want to read or just feel anything, I don't want to feel anybody's emotions, I'll literally go outside and walk around. The reason why you are feeling blocked is because you're not grounded, essentially. So I will literally ground myself, go outside, play with dirt or something. That's what's worked for me. Other people have journaled. Other people pay attention to their dreams. In reality, we pay attention to our dreams. That's when signs come in. Also, if you pay attention to songs on the radio, or looking at numbers that are repeated, those are angel numbers. Those are signs like, hey, Ashleigh, I'm trying to get your attention, like
a lot of angel numbers lately.
So like pay attention to those, especially if they're on repeat on certain times or whatever, because those have meaning. And then it's not that you're blocked. It's just, yes, you have a lot going on, but messages are still coming in. It just takes time. I won't tell you like, oh, Ashleigh, you got to go outside and meditate with a million different crystals and oils. Like, I won't.
Please no.
I'm not going to tell you that, because I don't do that. And when I'm stressed out, yes, I will go diffuse an oil, right? Because it makes me feel good. I do things that make me feel good. And that's if that's having one glass of wine and it relaxes me, that's how I'm able to get messages and see things clearly,
Before we close out this episode, I wanted to ask one last question when it comes to our pets and the afterlife. I want to loop back around to pets, because I always hear dogs coming through, and maybe a cat. And I've heard both, but is it all animals? Is it my lizard? Is it my fish? Is it just mammals? I mean, I never heard of people going, my parrot came back or whatever. It's always like my dog. Like, for instance, when my dogs passed, I didn't really have anything really. But then my sister's dog, she got that dog kind of right before her son passed away. So it meant a lot to her. It was her German Shepherd. And she's like, I'm telling you, Amber, this dog is more than a dog. Like, this is like my other child. Like, we have such a bond, and I can look into her eyes and we just get each other. Like, she's like, I can't even describe my connection with this dog. And she passed away unexpectedly. And the interesting part was that when my nephew passed away, he was not able to get through to my sister. He came to me. And the same thing happened with her dog. And so I think it's been a little over a year now, and I had never had really any dog spirit thing happen to me. And then when Greta passed away, she was devastated, just beyond devastated. And so kind of in the same mental space as she was when her son passed away. And it was the craziest thing. It was during the holidays, and the dog had just passed, and we were all grieving. We were so upset. And I woke up in the middle of the night and I heard her bark like in my head. And I kind of like got up and like, oh my God, I think I just heard Greta. And it was the most bizarre thing, because I was like, it's like in my head. Like I could hear it, like she was talking to me, like, hey. And I knew that bark. I'm like, it wasn't just any big dog bark. I have a small dog, so I would know if it was my dog. And I was in a different state. And so, yeah, I like told her, I think I heard Greta last night. I think she's trying to like get through. I think she's like, Mama, I'm good. I'm on the other side. And then I heard her again, and we kind of started laughing, because I was like, I feel like I'm going crazy. Oh my gosh, it's happening. Like now I'm hearing dogs. And when we got back from Chicago, I had babysat her several times and with my boyfriend, and she's so tall, like in the morning she would come up to the side of the bed and just kind of whimper, like, is it time? Are you getting up? I'm hungry. Like this little whimper, like, wake up, hello. And I heard it, I'm like laying in bed, and I heard Greta kind of whimpering like in my face. And of course my eyes shot up, and I'm like, oh my God. So me and my boyfriend were like, ghost dog came for a visit again. It's the ghost dog. And then literally shortly after, and he's never had any experiences on any level. And then like a day or two later, he's like, I got to tell you something. I'm like, what? He's like, I heard ghost dog. I heard her. She was whimpering on my side of the bed. And so we were like, oh, that's so sweet. Like she's trying, just like her son, she's trying so hard to get to anyone to let them know, hey, I'm good. I made it to the other side. And can you tell my mom I'm good? And I just think it's so sweet. But I don't know. I'm like, is it just dogs? Is it kitty cats? Is it fish? Is it like, who is it? Do we all have souls? I don't know if anyone can answer that question, but.
Oh my God, Amber, you're going to get me in so much trouble. 5 Hail Marys. No, I was kidding. So I would say yes. It really, when you said parrot, my brother had this parrot. I hated this parrot so much because he didn't like me. His name was Alfie. He was a green parrot, and he connected with my brother really well. He came from a home that he was kind of neglected, but he took to my brother really, really well. And I think my brother was in his teens, because him and I are 7 years apart. And so I was a little younger than my brother. And he would sleep with my brother every night. And one day he just died of old age over the years. And I swear there would be like a part in the couch where Alfie would always sit, but he would always sit just to scare me, and then he would laugh. So I remember I was walking towards the couch after he had died, and I was like, oh, the bird's not here. Like no one's going to scare me. And I felt feathers, and I freaked out, and I was like, oh. And then that's when I knew. I was like, oh, you just had to do that. You just had to get the last laugh. Like, this is so, so cute. But I do, like, based on mine, I always feel that, so yes, cats and dogs, parrots in my case, but there are other people that have seen or felt their animals, especially when they have that close connection with that animal. It's just different. Not all pets come back. I had 2 dogs pass away, and I never got to feel that. It's different. I feel like all pets have souls. It just depends on like that soul they connect with. Like Bodhi with you, Ashleigh, had that soul connection. Land Shark, my dog, who is Ashley and Amber, I did talk to you about like my dog having cognitive dysfunction. He's my soul dog. It's funny. I just talked about him. I could hear him come downstairs. He's my soul dog. Do I hope like when he passes, he comes to me? Yes. if I go in expecting it, then I'm never going to see it. And I feel like when a lot of people who have passed on, especially with pets, they'll want it. And I feel like pets won't show up because they want it, because if they feel like they're not ready to be like there, just like grieving. They want you to be okay, but if they keep showing up, you're going to want it all the time. You just have to learn how to let go. Animals will choose your next pet. They train them. It's weird. I can't even tell you like the booklet that they do, but they do. They choose another pet for you. And it's to help you process.
What about the rainbow bridge? Is that a thing? Is that something we want to believe in? Where do they go? Are they waiting for us? And then when we go, then we meet up just like, you hear.
No,
like
so,
what?
No,
do they go somewhere else? Where do they go?
No, I love that you asked that, because the rainbow bridge does exist. And I know there are other people who have said that their pets will wait for them and welcome them. I mean, we're talking about every pet you have that passed on will wait for you. You never enter the other side without someone you have loved and they loved you.
There's something about pets and dogs and they're just so smart, and I feel like the connection, like the unconditional love and the things that happen with dogs and how like they know how to help, or they know how to find help, or they save a human, or it's just wild. It's like they're just these little angels on earth.
What's that saying about if my dog doesn't like you, I don't like you? Because I feel like 100%. They have such instincts that if my dog doesn't like you, that means I don't like you because there's something wrong with that person. Because right, it's like, how does anyone not like animals?
Yeah.
How? Like, it's not even within my realm of thinking, but anywho, anything before we wrap up? Any last thoughts on children with abilities or pet spirits? Because I know we kind of hopped around. It was a very broad subject tonight, but I love both of them.
So children with abilities, I would say, have that open conversation, teach them how to shield themselves. If they feel overwhelmed, just imagine them. I still do this. Like when someone I feel like they're sucking the life out of me just by talking to me, or I don't want to talk to them, I will create a shield, like an imaginary plexiglass in front of me. And then whatever energy they're spewing on me will go back to them, because I'm not taking it in and I'm not feeling it. That's what people are like, gosh, she's so exhausting. She just kept talking. And I feel every time I talk to her, I'm always exhausted. So those people are called energy dumpers, because once they're done dumping all that stuff to you, they go back and they're like, oh my God, I love talking to her. I feel great. It's because they dumped everything to you. And it happens a lot to empaths, which is why I always say practice mindfulness, but at the same time, protect your energy. Like you want to help, but remember that that's not your energy to take, and just give it back. And you can go for children as well. Like whatever they take in, it's not theirs. Just send it back. And always have that open conversation. Teach them that like nothing is weird. Nothing's out of the ordinary. You just have this extra ability to pick up things that will protect you along, along later on the run.
Well said. What about you, Ash? Anything?
I don't think so. I'm just thinking, I guess as having a child that has abilities, it's a fun journey to be on. Like he just knows things, and he's a very sensitive kid. I mean, when he was 3.5 or 4, he went on a fishing trip with my husband, and my husband couldn't find him and looked, and he was like a little ways down the river sitting on a rock meditating cross-legged. Like I don't know where he even learned it. It was before I started meditating. That's when I kind of knew something special was going on with this kid. But sometimes I think that I was chosen as his mom, as somebody that has had gifts, is still working on trying to bring those gifts back, and believes in it. Almost like I was chosen as his mom to help guide him. I think there's something really special about him that I haven't quite put my finger on. He knows things. He's come home from school sometimes and been like, I just feel like the world is a game. Like I feel like it's not real. Like we're living in. He's never seen The Matrix, but he's like brought that up. Like I feel like this is like an Earth school and it's not real. it's almost like he's born semi-conscious, and it's fascinating. But making sure I'm teaching him and guiding him and talking to people like Crystal or like, Renee or whatever to make sure that I'm helping him. And I guess my advice for people, if they feel like they have a child that has gifts, whether they themselves have had gifts or not, as a parent, would be to find somebody like Crystal, find a medium or somebody that can kind of help guide you, or read the books. There's so many books out there that can help you, because for myself, I was a very, 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 very scared child because I didn't understand what I was seeing, and I didn't really know who to talk to, and I didn't really think about it. I would just ask my mom to sleep in my room, or I'd go sleep in her room, and I'm trying to avoid that with my son. And so far, it's been working, except for that one time. But yeah, I guess that's all I have to say.
Yeah. Well, thank you. It's fascinating to me, and we are all truly connected, aren't we? Our pets, our children, there's a plan. And it's just absolutely mind-blowing to see how it all plays out. And the more you can step back and see the bigger picture, it is Earth School. That's what we're all here for. And we all have a role to play, teaching others and learning from others. But I guess that's part of the journey, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. What a fun interview. Well, before we sign off, I wanted to let you know that there's going to be a part 2 to this story. Now, I'm a firm believer that there's no such thing as coincidences, and that they have a deeper connection or significance beyond mere chance. And that is very much the case here. Let me give you a little backstory. Months ago, I found out that Ashleigh's dog had passed away and that her son was seeing his spirit. So naturally, I asked her to come back on the show to share her experience. But right around that time, I had also been introduced to a woman named Crystal, who happened to be a psychic medium. And so just in conversation, we thought it would be a great idea to have her join to add just a little more flavor to the interview. Much to my surprise, after the interview, I received this text from Crystal. It said, "Hey girl, I just want to say how appreciative I was for your podcast interview. Ashleigh brought so much comfort and unexpectedly prepared me for what is to come with my old man, Landshark. Today is one of the worst episodes I have seen him have, and I feel like the time for him to cross is coming faster than expected. Her story is so similar to what I'm going through, and Landshark always sleeps in my daughter's room. She's so upset, and it's heartbreaking, but I feel like I was supposed to hear Ashleigh's story." Turns out that Landshark also had doggy dementia, just like Bodhi. And within a week of our interview, he passed away. In part 2 of this episode, we're going to chat with Crystal about the events that transpired after Landshark's passing. You might remember her hoping that he would send a sign during today's episode. Well, I can tell you that he definitely did, and I can't wait to share with you what that was. Stay tuned for next week, part 2. We're going to hear how Landshark came through from the spirit world.